See, Jesus maybe tookie. Everything I drop classic, still labeled a rookie. Everything you drop feminine, definition of fruity. Everything is everything. Sit back and I peep the movie like my inner self say fuck niggas and do me. Build schools and homes, never build beef. But where I'm from, most niggas like fuck peace. He got game like a new age Spike Lester child.
Good evening and welcome to the Urban Girl Show. Today is Sunday the 29th, and today we're highlighting music, indie artist out of Compton called I Am Jamil. That's what I get off of his Twitter page. I don't really know what his rap name is, but really like his music, very positive, sometimes controversial, but nevertheless trying to spotlight new talent in the community. We want to start by saying I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving holiday, that you enjoyed your family and friends and the time off. According to the news, Black Friday sales were down by $1 billion. So it looks like the movement to black out the Black Friday extravaganza and frenzy of camping outside for days on end worked. Money was lost, and people feel very connected to the message. Today we are going to have a special guest. She's not here present in the studio, but Professor Melina Abdullah, chair of the Pan-African Studies Department over at Cal State LA, will be calling in to talk to us about Black Lives Matter, her involvement, and exactly what their goal is and what the outcome they would like to see with their efforts. I sent over some questions to her to have her check them out before we got started with the show, and lucky for all of us, none were rejected, so that's a positive thing. But first, we want to go ahead and recap this week's events. There's a lot to recap, so if you don't hear about it at the top of the show, you will definitely hear about those events once our guest calls in. But the most exciting news that happened on my way into this show was Kobe Bryant announcing his retirement from the Lakers. He started his career in LA straight out of high school in 1996. And by the time he will retire, he will have spent 20 years on the Lakers. Former LA Mayor Richard Riordan gave a special shout out to Kobe on his Twitter handle, thanking him for serving the LA residents for 20 years and being on the same team for his whole career, which in these days is very unheard of. Also this week, we saw a lot of rappers giving back to the community through turkey giveaways. YG was out in Compton with Mayor Asia Brown, and Snoop Dogg came over to Inglewood and hung out with Mayor Butts and passed out Thanksgiving to over 3,000 combined residents, which was very, very positive. On another note, we understand that there is a race going on for Congress. Isidore Hall is running for Congress, which will vacate his Senate District 35 seat. Steve Bradford, a former assemblyman from the 62nd District, is currently running for that seat. I am a little concerned. He has racked up a lot of endorsements throughout the South Bay, but he's missing key endorsements from the union SEIU and also hasn't gotten the seal of approval from the leaders in Assembly District 62, Autumn Burke, nor has he picked up the endorsement from Mike Gibson in AD 64. And the reason it troubles me is these will be individuals that he will have to work with very closely should he become the next senator. And I'm not sure if there's an issue there that we're just not aware of, or maybe they're being strategic in making their endorsement later. Nevertheless, we'll be watching out for those emails, and you can also keep us informed as you already have. A couple other things came to fruition over the weekend. Pat McGreevy over at LA Times and Sandy Mazza at the Daily Breeze wrote some rather interesting articles on elected officials in Inglewood and about the stadium deal. So I hope you guys will use Google, check those articles out. That's your homework for today, to look up those articles, read them, get a little bit more perspective on what's going on in the community and how smaller cities sometimes afford the opportunity for elected officials to skirt under the radar with some of their movements. So right now we're going to take a quick little break, and we'll be back to talk a little bit more about what's going on around the South Bay.
In the 44th Congressional District, we dream about better jobs, schools, and safer neighborhoods. What's Nanette Barragan's dream?
My dream of buying a home in Hermosa came true 5 years ago. I love Hermosa Beach.
But now she's running for Congress here, nowhere near Hermosa Beach.
I love Hermosa Beach.
Nanette Barragan got her dream. We need a member of Congress who will help us get ours.
Very good commercial discussing just what we just touched on, which is the congressional race for the 44th District. It covers a wide area including Inglewood, Gardena, Compton, Wilmington, Harbor City, Watts, Willowbrook. Very diverse, yet very crucial race. A lot of times we are very concerned about the national aspects of political races, but we have to pay more attention to those races that are going on locally. The federal dollars comes in, but how they're allocated and spent locally is where the people sometimes are a little disconnected in how they'll turn out for a national race, but the numbers are always really low in local races. Other good things going on around the area this week. Very full community calendar. Thursday seems to be the biggest day. We have the 25th annual Beat the Odds luncheon and awards, where another 5 students from local high schools applied and received $10,000 scholarships from Children's Defense Fund. So those recipients are Vincent Zamaripa from Huntington Park High School, David Cho from Robert F. Kennedy, David Sanchez from John F. Kennedy Senior High, Stephanie Gamino from USC Hybrid High School, and Natasha Denson from Valley Academy Arts and Science. So congratulations to those 5 recipients. Again, the luncheon and the awards ceremony will be held this Thursday at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. To my understanding, tickets are still available if any of you would like to go out and show some support for these high school students. Also this week, Isidore Hall, our senator, is having a birthday bash down at the Conga Room. Faith Evans will be performing. There's also tickets available for that soiree. And on another note, the 16th annual Malibu Film Festival kicks off this Thursday in Malibu at the Regal Cinemas. And a special movie that I wanted to make sure that everyone knew about is by Chip Croft, and it's called Lost Compassion, and it deals with the disappearance of Mitrice Richardson. Many of us remember her story. She was dining at a Malibu restaurant. She didn't have enough money to pay the bill. The police were called. She was taken into custody by LA County sheriffs, went up to the Malibu Lost Hills station, and was never seen alive once she was released that fateful night. So I think that'd be a really good film if you're in the area to go see and support, especially with the topic of Black Lives Matter. You know, there's so many instances of mistreatment in the black community, and sometimes there are women who are also affected by this police brutality. So just try to think about supporting that film and going up to Malibu if your time permits. We're still going to have Professor Melina Abdullah call in shortly, so we'll take one more quick break and then we'll get back to the phone call.
Radio show is being sponsored in part by Honey Be Safe, whose global mission is to make healthy sex messages and products accessible and appealing to all. We know that approximately 35 million people around the world are living with HIV. More than 1.2 million are living in the United States. We believe wearing condoms is the first step to prevent the spread of sexually transmitted diseases and HIV/AIDS. We promote healthy sex and healthy relationships through education, products, and donations. We give to nonprofit organizations and causes supporting HIV/AIDS programs, services, and research. For more information, visit our website at www.honeybesafe.org and follow us on Twitter at honeybesafe.
And we thank you for tuning in to the Urban Girl Show. For those of you who may have just tuned in, we want to give a special thank you to our sponsor, Honey Be Safe. She wants to make sure that everyone is using condoms, no matter what your sexual preference is, because she believes that everyone should be safe and have safe, healthy options. Now tonight our guest she'll be calling in is Professor Melina Abdullah, And if you recall, 2 weeks ago, we had a few activists in our studio who talked about Black Lives Matter from the perspective of males who are not necessarily involved in the movement, but are strong supporters of the work that they are doing in the community. General Jeff not called in, but he was here, talked about some events that transpired in the community. And now that we have Ms. Abdullah on the line, we will get more in depth into exactly what are the goals and the desired outcomes that Black Lives Matter chooses to achieve. So I'm gonna put my headsets on because she's on. Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Thank you for calling in, Professor Abdullah.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. We've been reading and hearing so much about you. I think there's so many people that think that they know who you are, but please give us a little bit more background about what you actually do and your work over at Cal State LA in the Pan-African Studies Department.
Sure. Well, I'm professor and chair of Pan-African Studies at Cal State LA. And Pan-African Studies is really the examination of the experiences, history, culture of Black people all around the world. And so that's the work that I do. My focus is on African American studies. But within the department, we have Africanists, we have people who do Afro-Latino work, who do Caribbean work. And so that's kind of what we do. And we're the second oldest department of Black studies in the country. So the first started at San Francisco State in 1968, and we were right behind them with the department at Cal State LA in 1969. So we really think of ourselves as kind of the intellectual arm of the movement, and at least that's what we try to be at Cal State LA.
Now, why is Pan-African Studies of interest to you?
Well, I don't want to tell you my whole life story, but I'm from Oakland, and the neighborhood I grew up in had a really bad high school and school system, so I wound up using someone else's address and going to Berkeley High School, which was, in the next city over. And at the time, Berkeley High was the only high school in the country that had a Black Studies department. And there I kind of found myself. It was really important for me. And although I wound up not graduating from Berkeley High and actually going to independent studies and kind of, I guess now it would have been considered, I would have been considered a dropout. At some point, the seeds that were planted in the classroom in Black Studies at Berkeley High School with Mr. Navies really took root and encouraged me to apply to college, even though I didn't think I would get in. And I went to Howard and majored in African American Studies. And I can say that the discipline literally saved my life. I would have been on a very, very different path had it not been for Black Studies or Pan-African Studies. And so I guess what I'm doing, and the reason that I got pulled into the discipline, even though my PhD is in political science, it's that I think that there's a difference in studying Black as opposed to Black studies. That's what one of my mentors says, right? So that we position ourselves and really tie what we do in the classroom to what's happening in the real lives of our students and our real collective lives makes it a living discipline and makes it a discipline that's necessary for the advancement of Black people. And so that's what pulled me into Pan-African Studies and why I do what I do.
Well, when I was in college and getting ready to select courses, I would always see the Pan-African Studies section of class courses, but didn't really understand how I would be able to get a job in that field. So if someone is thinking about going into a full-time student in Pan-African Studies, what kind of work would they traditionally get involved in?
You can do anything with a degree in Pan-African Studies that you can do with a degree in any other social science or humanities discipline. So I mean, what would you do with a degree in English or an undergrad degree in psychology or sociology or political science? All of those things are things that you can do with a degree in Pan-African Studies. So our graduates go on to teach school. They work at community organizations. We have a lot of young people who go on to careers in entertainment. In fact, Ava DuVernay, the writer and director for the film Selma, actually her degree is in African American Studies. And so you can do anything with that degree. And in fact, graduates from Cal State LA's Pan-African Studies Department get into the top graduate schools and law schools in the country. So we currently have students at UCLA. I think we have 3 at UCLA, 2 at UC Berkeley, SUNY Albany, Florida International, lots and lots of different schools, University of Washington. And so our graduates are actually, by measure, more successful, by most measures, more successful than students who come out of other fields. And that's partially because we're a small department. We're a department that's rooted in the idea that we're a family and that each student in the department gets personalized care and love and, you know, is kind of part of who we are. And so it helps them to progress and it helps them to do really well. We have a vested interest in making sure all of our students do well. The graduation rate for black students at Cal State LA is really, really low. The last count was a 14% graduation rate among black students. So that meant out of every 100 black students that came in, only 14 would graduate within 6 years. Well, in Pan-African Studies, we have a 100% graduation rate, and that is unheard of. You know, for every student who comes in to graduate is a huge deal, and most of our students graduate in the span of 4 years.
Well, I have a friend. She took Pan-African Studies, and a mutual friend of ours, we always tease her and say, we always can tell in the room who took Pan-African Studies because they have a different perception of and conversation when it comes to black issues. So do you think, in your opinion, by teaching this discipline as long as you have, that it creates a more, not militant outlook, but a more, a stronger love for black people? Or how do you, I don't really know how to
for sure. That's a great thing, right? Like, it does create a stronger love and respect and understanding for who black people are, right? And that's why our students do well, because they understand themselves, they understand their history, they understand our history, they understand their sense of agency, that when something happens in the world that is oppressive or unjust, we don't just sit around and wait for someone else to solve the problem or to do something. That in being immersed in the history and legacy of our people, we understand that when we think of greats like Ella Baker or Malcolm X or Angela Davis or, you know, Martin Luther King, those were just people who decided to act and engage and do work that empowers us. And so I think, you should hopefully know who took a Pan-African Studies class or who was a Pan-African Studies major in the room by their sense of connection and kind of the audacity to change the world around them.
Well, speaking of having the audacity to change the world around you, you've become a very vocal figure of the Black Lives Matter, especially LA chapter movement. How did you become involved with founding the LA chapter of Black Lives Matter?
Well, the LA chapter is the first. Most of us didn't know what we were doing, the significance of what we were doing when we did it. And so on July 13th, 2013, you'll remember that George Zimmerman was acquitted in the murder of Trayvon Martin. And like most black people in Los Angeles, I was one of the ones who erupted and, did what I had to do, took care of my family, but then as soon as I got my kids to bed, poured out into Leimert Park with thousands of other black folks. And, we marched for 3 days and demonstrated and voiced our rage. And then on the third day, on July 15th, I got a text from a sister named Patrice Cullors, who'd been, it actually came through another sister who's a journalist, Tandasizwe Chimaranga. Patrice had been dialoguing with the two other founders of BLM, Alicia Garza and Opal Tometi, and they decided that it's now time for us to develop kind of the response to state-sanctioned violence into a long-lasting movement, rather than just kind of erupting every few months around these murders that were happening with increased frequency. And so that night, July 15th, 2013, about 30 of us went down to St. Elmo's Village, which is, a black artist community in Los Angeles, and we formed what we called at the time Justice for Trayvon Martin Los Angeles. But we, as we planned our actions, there was an action that kind of unfolded in the next couple of days, shutting down Beverly Hills. As we did that, Patrice and Alicia had been talking about what this means, and on the day that Zimmerman was acquitted, Alicia had written a love letter to black people, and she signed it Black Lives Matter. And so on all of our signs, it said J for TMLA, really big, which stood for Justice for Trayvon Martin Los Angeles. But underneath it, really small, it said Black Lives Matter. And that was really the start of the movement. So we didn't know that it was going to become a global movement. We didn't know that it was going to be bigger than Trayvon Martin. Really, we had no concept of what we were building. But in the end, it feels like, well, it's not the end, but I kind of, where we are now, it feels like kind of a new anti-lynching movement that's developed.
So, not having any idea of the direction that the hashtag became and how big it's become, do you think that there are some misrepresentations of what that hashtag means? Because now we see it evolved into White Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, All Lives Matter. How do we explain that it's now bigger than life, but the perception is that the group is militant, the group isn't organized, the group is new? Do the players have to be vested in the community in terms of media exposure to make it a credible group, or do you just have to care about the topic?
Oh, that's a lot. So I think that we are new and we are militant, and we're unapologetically new and militant and black. And, we say very clearly Black Lives Matter, and when you kind of transpose or erase the black in front of the Lives Matter and put something else in front of it, you're really saying, in your view, black lives don't matter, right? And so we say Black Lives Matter because we're at the bottom of every single measure in this society. Black Lives Matter because we're the only group that's killed every 28 hours by law enforcement, vigilantes, or security, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we think about that, yeah, we're moving forward in a way that's really radical and really revolutionary, and that really demands the complete transformation of this system. And so that requires that we be creative in our formation. That requires that we kind of develop in ways that might not be recognizable to most people. And it requires a deep rooting in the community. And so Black Lives Matter we call ourselves a womanist black nationalist movement, right? And as a womanist black nationalist movement, it means that we're part of a larger black collective, and our freedom, our individual freedoms, are reliant and coupled with the freedoms of all the rest of the black world. And so we'll never be free until all black people are free.
Well, it also sounds, a little bit of my research shows that Patrice Cullors was part of the Bus Riders Union. Mm-hmm. That brought a lot of awareness to, differences in bus routes in poor communities versus more affluent communities. You being an educator and a tenured professor, I may add, over at Cal State LA. It doesn't sound like you guys are new to this work at all. It just sounds like now it became the time to actually put heads together to actually bring some organization to a movement that up until now wasn't really on our radar. I think we knew what was going on in our communities, but just not knew the degree that it was going on even outside of the LA area.
Yeah, I mean, all of us have been organizers for a long time. Most of us, at least, have been organizers for a long time. Alicia has been an organizer for a long time around domestic workers. There's the BAJI, which is the...
Hello? It looks like
reforming the sheriff's department. And so we're not new to organizing. What we are birthing, though, that is new, is kind of this global movement that has an understanding of how all of our different oppressions intersect, and a kind of collective visioning of what freedom looks like for Black people.
Well, one thing that really brought home the message of Black Lives Matter, and I'm not discrediting any of the other victims at the hands of police officers, but when they released the video of Laquan McDonald a couple of days ago,
right,
and you see a police officer, usually the standard rhetoric we hear is, I was in fear of my life and, we had no choice. For a cop to come on the scene and in less than 15 seconds get out of the car and shoot 16 times into a person, if that were a husband and a wife, the jury would say that was a crime of passion. You have to have some serious kind of disdain or hate for this person to shoot them or stab them this many times. So to see an officer shoot a person for 16 times and then stand over them and act like they're going to reload the weapon, that has to show some serious hatred for Black people. Or
right.
Maybe I've misunderstood his body position, but that's what it came across to me. So I think when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, that was the whole everything in one shot, where you're actually murdered in the street, laying on the ground, fetal position, not even a threat at any moment, but are still being pelted with bullets because someone wants to kill you. And maybe he didn't want to kill him that day, so maybe I'm speaking out a little too opinion-wise, but from what we saw in that video, the victim didn't stand a chance to get out of there alive. Then we see the Colorado shooter who kills cops, and they take him into custody. So
right.
What kind of message are they sending that Black lives do matter? They're not really making a good case for that.
Right. And, what's sad is Laquan McDonald, the shooting of Laquan McDonald, the murder of Laquan McDonald, and this is the first time that an on-duty officer has been charged with first-degree murder. But the murder of Laquan McDonald and what happened in that case, what's sad is it's not unusual. It was shocking to watch. It was heartbreaking to watch, because he was killed with absolutely no regard for his life, right? They wouldn't have killed an animal the way they killed him, And let's not forget that there were other officers on the scene who never snitched on the officer who killed him, right? Mm-hmm. So they're all complicit. The whole system is complicit. And what I'm saying, though, with Laquan's killing not being unusual, although it's horrific, and although I mourn for his family, especially watching that video, I mourn for his family, I also know that that's the same story that Jamar Clark has in Minneapolis, right? Mm-hmm. That all the witness accounts are that he was handcuffed on the ground and then shot execution style in the head. We all watched a year ago when Lowman in Cleveland murdered 12-year-old Tamir Rice in much the same way. What was it, a span of like 6 seconds? They killed this boy playing with a toy gun in a park over Thanksgiving break. The boy is doing absolutely what he should be doing as a child on break, right? He's in a park with a toy, and they murder him, right? We've seen this with Ezell Ford here in Los Angeles. All the witness accounts say what? That Ezell was lying face down on the ground, and Charlton Wampler and Antonio Villegas assassinated him. And that's what the autopsy report corroborates. And so while the murder of Laquan McDonald is horrific, it's not unique. And I think what it points to is that it's not just a matter of one rogue, poorly trained, possibly racist police officer, but an entire policing system that sees black people not just as disposable, but as targets. And so that's why we can't simply work to reform the system. We have to completely and fundamentally transform the system and build something different, because it's beyond the individual officers.
Now, the work that we've seen Black Lives Matter LA chapter doing is being very vocal in putting pressure on Mayor Garcetti to discipline LAPD Chief Charlie Beck by firing him. How would that solve the problem locally?
Well, first it's important for your listeners to know that LAPD is the most murderous police force in the entire nation. They like to put this like kind, gentle face on it and pretend like they're a community policing agency, but they're not. LAPD has killed now, I think it's 21 people so far this year. It might be 20. The next closest city is Houston, which has only killed 14 people, right? So by far and away, LA is the most murderous police force in the nation. Now, what has Charlie Beck done as the head of this murderous police force? He continues to pat the police on the back who kill people. So the example I'll give is Ezell Ford. When Ezell Ford was killed, we pushed, we worked, we rallied, we demonstrated, and we ultimately got the Los Angeles Police Commission to rule that Vegas were out of policy in killing Ezell Ford. That's what has to happen in order for them to get disciplined, right? So after a year or a little less than a year of work, they ruled that these officers are out of policy. As soon as the police commission issues its ruling, what does Beck do but go on closed-circuit TV and issue a video statement to his officers, and this is a direct quote, saying, "I support you. The mayor supports you, and that support will protect you like the vests that you wear." So when you think about that, he is a mob boss. He runs a crime ring, and he thinks that he can rule and occupy and oppress and brutalize and murder black folks in black communities with impunity. And we say we're not going to stand for that. So yes, our number one demand for Mayor Garcetti is to fire Chief Beck.
Now, what is the desired outcome of this movement beyond firing Chief Beck? What kind of structural changes are we looking for? Are we looking for laws to address this? Or is this a strategic series of events that will lead to the ultimate goal of reform? Like, how are you looking to achieve that?
So let me go backwards. We have 5 demands in the city of Los Angeles, which are the firing of Chief Beck, which include a reparations policy that looks similar to the one that passed recently in Chicago, which would give resources to people who've been brutalized by the police and the families of those who've been killed by police. We want open police commission meetings. We're one of the few major cities where police commission meetings are held at 9:30 in the morning on a workday. So they happen every Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. downtown in police headquarters, which is hugely intimidating. We want those meetings moved to a neutral location where community members can feel safe, and at a time when community members can be there, so in the evening or on the weekends. We also want the right community input into the appointments of key commissioners. So most recently, Mayor Garcetti appointed someone who happens to be black in color but has no foundation in the black community. And I'm sure he's an amazing entertainment lawyer. He's an entertainment lawyer representing people like Tyler Perry and Oprah Winfrey. And he lives in Sherman Oaks and has never lived in South L.A. So he appointed Matt Johnson to the police commission. When the community had nominated a phenomenal visionary brother named Aquila Sherrills, who brokered the 1992 peace treaty in Watts, who's an internationally recognized peace activist and who is also himself a crime survivor. His son was killed by gang violence some years back, and he is just a phenomenal person. He had unanimous community support, and the mayor ignored that. So we don't want that to ever happen again. We want a community voice in having folks appointed to key commissions. And then the last demand that we have is quarterly town hall meetings with the black community, with an agenda that we devise and with a format that's defined by the community itself. So those are our demands. And we think that by pushing those demands, we can begin to do what's really our ultimate goal, which is redefining public safety, recognizing that public safety is not limited to policing. And for black people, being safe often means, policing often means the antithesis of safety, right? And so we want to completely redefine and reimagine what safety is, and work towards a world that's really safe for black people.
Now, one of the questions I sent over, and it looks like we can move forward with it, is how come this message isn't also brought up in terms of our black politicians being quiet on these subjects? I've seen some pictures of them marching with signs that say hands up, don't shoot. But why do you feel that our black leadership doesn't speak out when we see these kinds of situations affecting the black community?
How much time do we have?
Oh, you have time.
Okay. Well, I think that you said black politicians. One of the things that we need to understand is that the central goal of a politician, black or otherwise, is to get elected and get reelected, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you do that? You need votes and you need money. Guess what they don't get from black people? The money. Right. And so really what winds up happening is most elected officials are running based on the interest of big business, based on the interest of what we call white supremacist patriarchal capitalism, right? So the idea that white people are at the top of the racial hierarchy, that they keep women oppressed, and that they exploit workers. And so those are the interests that most elected officials represent. It's very difficult to move them. But even if you can move them, even if you have, there's a few good ones, right? There's a few who get it. But even with those, they're embedded in a system that's meant to keep that existing power structure in place. Mm-hmm. So let's take like Barbara Lee in Oakland, right? Remember, she was the only one who voted against the Iraq War. It didn't matter that she voted against the Iraq War except symbolically, right? Because the entire system is going to move without her. We can think about President Obama. Some people were hoping President Obama was like Malcolm X and Barack Obama's clothing. He wasn't, right? He's nothing but a moderate. But let's say he really was a radical. Even as President of the United States, he couldn't transform the system fundamentally because the system is designed to sustain itself. So yes, we love to have black elected officials who are more involved. We love to have people. We can usher in reforms through our elected officials. So it would be great if someone like a Marquise Harris Dawson picked up the reparations policy that we want and said, you know, the 3 black folks on LA City Council are going to align themselves with the Latino council members, and we are going to push for this reparations policy because we know it's black and brown people who are brutalized and killed by police. That would be absolutely amazing. That wouldn't be, though, the end of what we want. And so we need progressive people in office, but I think even more than that, we need people who are not in office, just regular old folks like me and you, right, who raise their kids and go to work and, you know, hustle every day to make ends meet. We need us to recognize our own power and say, you know what, we have the power to create change, right? So do you think for a minute that any one of these presidential candidates would have mentioned or thought about Black Lives Matter had it not been for the work of the people on the ground saying, you better say it or I'm going to snatch your mic, right?
Not at all.
Yeah, so it's us. It's us that's going to create the change. It's just regular old black folks like, you know, grandmas, and, you know, I'm a single mom of 3 kids. It's regular people who are going to do it. We got, you know, phenomenal people who are former gang members and, you know, bus drivers, and that's who's making this work. You know, that's who's doing the work and who is really going to transform things. So our elected officials have their place. We definitely have to pressure them. I think we need to do more to pressure President Obama specifically. You know, our local folks, there's some local folks who are down with this, right? Who, not completely because they still got to get elected. But
well, I
think
say that Steve Bradford has been very vocal. Now that he's no longer an elected official, he's been speaking out more on this topic because with him founding the Boys and Men of Color in the Assembly, I think he gets it. And now that he's not an elected official, he has a lot more freedom to speak. But it almost feels like if we're going to have elected officials who tell us that we need representation that looks like us, we need to have people in power that can move our interests. It seems like they can't move our interests because we don't fund them to do so.
Right, right. Well, I think that they could also be a little more courageous, you know. So I think they could be a little more courageous. But again, I think that it's us that's actually going to do the work, not necessarily those who are in office.
So we have seen Black Lives Matter camp out at the mayor's residence. We've seen the disruption at the Biltmore. We saw disruption at the church town hall. Do you think that the tactics that the Black Lives Matters has already engaged in are working to reach the outcome that you guys are seeking?
Oh, absolutely. And you only scratch the surface with the disruptions. We shut down the Grove. We shut down Restaurant Row in Beverly Hills. We shut down Wilshire and Rodeo. We like shutting it down. We shut down 3rd Street Promenade. I can't even name how many places we've shut down. The 101 freeway, lots of stuff, right? Okay. I think disruption is a phenomenal tactic, even when it doesn't necessarily have, you know, tangible outcomes in terms of policy. What it does is remind those who have power and who have resources that we're not going to suffer this kind of oppression in the silence of South LA. Like, they're not going to be able to just drive around Watts and get away from it. We're coming to their hood too, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that that's really important. I think that you've seen some movement. So I think the clearest policy victory that we've seen is the passage of Assembly Bill 953, which we worked on in collaboration with one of our strongest partners, the Youth Justice Coalition. That's the anti-racial profiling bill, which recently passed, which requires the collection of racial data on all stops so that we can actually have the statistical support to demonstrate how our folks are profiled and how that connects with police brutality and police killings.
And we're going to expect LAPD to take these statistics?
Oh, they have to. They have no choice.
Well, we know that they fudge their statistics on other things, so how...
Oh, they're going to fudge it, but they're going to have to say something, right? So the point is that when they make stops, they're going to have to put in the data. Now, they can lie about the data, but they're going to have to put it in. And they're going to get caught, usually, if they lie, right? So we can always audit data. Also, there's a piece in this bill that actually allows for an auditing or requires an auditing.
Now, see, I didn't know about AB 953, so thank you for enlightening myself to this. And who can we thank for helping to author and get this measure moved in the Assembly?
I believe it was Shirley Weber. I'm not absolutely sure, but I believe it was Shirley Weber from San Diego. Shirley Weber has done a lot of our work for, racial justice in the state. That's why I said there are some good ones. She's actually a former Black Studies professor from San Diego State. And, she was, I believe, the author. I'm looking it up right now. But there are a few good ones who are willing to kind of use their positions to advocate. Yeah, she was the author of AB 953. Who are willing to use their positions to advocate for us.
Now, do you believe that there's any part of the Black Lives Matter message that isn't being conveyed through the media?
I think that the media often kind of describes us as a leaderless movement when we describe ourselves as a leaderful movement. And I think that what happens is people don't understand what we mean by that. What we mean is that we have faith in our people, that the people who make up Black Lives Matter, and we have 26 chapters globally, the people who make up Black Lives Matter, the thousands of us within the ranks of BLM, all have gifts and talents that we bring to the movement. And the gifts and talents that we bring to the movement can be used to be leaders within that movement. And so what that means is there's no hierarchy that people can point to. There's no, this is the chair or the president or, whatever of Black Lives Matter. There's none of that because we all bear the responsibility for leadership. And so I think that is often misunderstood by people.
Well, I think it's very honorable and great to see all these women stepping up into these leadership roles. Even in spite of having families, jobs, they still find time to do work in the community that is so desperately needed. We know that there's a lot of work to go around, so there's not just one group of people that can do this type of work. It takes a collective effort. It takes multiple movements, and it takes a lot of passion to stay focused to do this kind of work, because it can come with a lot of setbacks and a lot of negative feedback. But I think that the overall message is clear that Black Lives Matter. We can say all lives matter. The police should definitely do a better job of trying to use those training skills that they receive to help bring a person into custody. We've seen them do it with multiple white individuals who have committed more heinous crimes than selling loose cigarettes or even holding a toy gun inside of a retail store that sells them. So I think that this is a topic that resonates with people of any color, because as a mother, there are days I'm a little fearful of my son being out. Who is he going to come across? If he does get stopped, is he going to come home? Is he going to have a some kind of something in his face that makes an officer feel some kind of way about his body language or his presence. So I think that these are issues that are definitely, even if we haven't experienced them personally, that we can all relate to the hope that we have that our child never comes across an overzealous cop who may decide to pump bullets in him as opposed to try to talk to him and bring him into custody. But again, I really thank you for your time, Dr. Abdullah. I really appreciate you calling in and giving a very candid conversation to the listeners about Black Lives Matter. And how can they follow you to keep up with information and, you know, participate if their time permits in future activities that Black Lives Matter will partake in?
Sure. Well, they can definitely join our Facebook group, Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, and follow us on Twitter at BLMLA for Black Lives Matter Los Angeles. And then we have our general meetings every second Sunday of the month. And so just check our Facebook page. We usually post it a couple days before, and our locations vary for that. But we'd love to have all of your listeners get involved. Everybody has something that they can bring to the movement, whether it be just, you know, helping us with the organizing work, or making a financial contribution, or, you know, lending their creativity. We always need artists to be a part of the movement. Whatever it is, bring your skills to the movement and your resources to the movement so that we can all get free, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, sis.
You are so welcome, and we hopefully will have you back sometime next year, and we can check in and see how the work is going, see if we're making any progress. Hopefully we'll see some more town halls that will be more inclusive, maybe at a better setting than a church, and hopefully we can actually get some work done in the community that will, you know, resonate to a more positive outcome.
Yes, for sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. You have a good evening.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, we just finished our conversation with Dr. Melina Abdullah. I hope that we found it to be very enlightening. Hopefully some of you will want to spring into action and become more involved in Black Lives Matter, whether it's through support or actually being a participant. But either way, it's a definite movement that we don't see stopping anytime soon. Again, we want to thank Dr. Melina Abdullah for coming on the show. Thank you to all the listeners and viewers who tuned in this week. Next week, we will have, we'll be back. I'm not going to tell you who the guest is. You can check us on social media, Facebook or Twitter at 2UrbanGirls. You can also visit the website, 2urbangirls.com. Again, don't forget, we have great events coming up this week. You can either go hang out with Isadora Hall and Faith Evans at the Conga Room. You can go hang out with some bright students over at the Beat the Odds award ceremony in Beverly Hills. Or you can come meet me out in Malibu at the 16th Annual Malibu Film Festival for the screening of Lost Compassions. We are going to end the show with our indie rapper out of Compton. We're going to finish his song, God Bless the Child. You guys have a blessed week. Thank you.
My nigga, look at you now. Still focus on this rap shit and you got a child. Still focus on this black shit and niggas is wild. Still slaves, minding slave shit, but niggas is proud. Thinking, am I going crazy? In a paranoid state as I hallucinate daily. Wishing on a star like an Atlantic Star single. Had me dodging Dick Tracy. Nappy head full of wool. White people call it twisties like that gang. Guess who? Izzy Jesus, maybe Tookie. Everything I drop classic, still labeled a rookie. Everything you drop feminine, definition of fruity. Everything is everything. Sit back and I peep the movie like my inner self say fuck niggas and do me. Build schools and homes, never build beef. But where I'm from, most niggas like fuck peace. He got game like a new age. God bless the child that got his own. Took his own. Took the wrong road, trying to make it home. Highway to heaven, I can see my goal. Wanna give up, but I can't stop. My nigga, look at you now. Got the mayor of the city trying to figure you out. Got the whole game shook, plot taking you out. But if I kill a trap beat, guess I wanna be South. Fuck your comment, make a real nigga wanna vomit. If I can't be Cube, you want me to be Common? If I can't be me, maybe I don't wanna drop shit. That's why I'm independent. I'm captain of the cockpit. Kidnap the cast of Empire. Torture hot key with vice grips. Tell Timberland if he keep on making that whack shit, I'ma help Chuck D give him an ass kick. My nigga, that ain't hip hop. Niggas say they for the culture, then sell us out for a damn sitcom. Black man made the cell phone and now they tap him. Indigenous taught pilgrims, then pilgrims killed. God bless the child that got his own. Took the wrong road, trying to make it home. Highway to heaven, I can see my goal. Wanna give up, but I can't stop. God bless the child that got his own. Took the wrong road, trying to